Well, we are and we're not, because you don't arrive at opinions like that by accident. You could turn on the laziest phone-in host in the world and he'll be talking about motability and benefits, and people like you in your £2.5 million house will be thinking, yeah, why don't we go after that person there, that disabled person with a car? Why are you coming after me and my £2.5 million house? So it isn't off-piste, is it? It's very, very relevant to this conversation, because that's what you've ended up believing.
But at the end of the day, what you should be doing as well, they should be doing checks to see if everyone actually needs all of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We shouldn't be talking about people in £2.5 million houses paying a few grand a year. We should be talking about disabled people in cars.
So, but what I'm saying to you,
I know what you're saying to me. I'm listening to every word, Rob.
But what I'm saying is, when I started off, I was in the council house, and I've
and if you were still there, you wouldn't have to pay a mansion tax. But you're not. So what?
What is up, everybody? Harry here. This is James O'Brien on LBC the day after a UK budget, with a caller named Rob who lives in a £2.5 million house and is worried about a proposed mansion tax. What's striking about this call isn't the tax question itself. It's where Rob's mind goes first. Motability, cars for disabled people. Before O'Brien even asks him to justify his position, there's a real contested economic debate buried in this call about wealth taxes and welfare spending, but there's also a specific pattern worth naming carefully. Let's get into it. Get subscribed if that's useful to you.
You mentioned about, people raking up leaves, working in the coal, whether it's roofers, road workers, etc., and stuff like that. So I actually fit into that category. I come from a council house. My wife comes from a council house as well. And we've worked since the age of 16 extremely hard, 6 days a week, to provide for our family. We also live in a house that's well over £2 million. And obviously this mansion tax is a huge worry for us, because obviously we put all of our money and savings, etc., renovations and so on, into this property that we'd like to hand down to our children. And at the same time, I think it's a little bit unfair that we're going to be taxed on something. One, I've paid a huge amount of tax in as I've gone along, and two, I've come from nothing. So it's not as if I'm sitting around doing any, not working hard, not out on the street, etc., and stuff like that. So just as I say, that's where I feel it's a little bit unfair.
I don't really understand which bit of your biography you think should exclude you from this tax.
Well, the fact that why should I be penalised for work? So what does it say to someone who so if you want to achieve things in life, what does it say to someone that if you get to a certain point you have to pay more tax?
Well, you already do. We already live in that society. That's what tax thresholds do on income tax.
And I get that, and I think they should be putting up income tax. I think they should be keeping an eye on what they spend on welfare. Keeping an eye on how much, if are people actually entitled to mobility cards, etc., and stuff like that, rather than just wasting money. I know we're going a little bit off-piste here, but
we are and we're not, because you don't arrive at opinions like that by accident. You could turn on the laziest phone-in host in the world and he'll be talking about motability and benefits, and people like you in your £2.5 million house will be thinking, yeah, why don't we go after that person there, that disabled person with a car? Why are you coming after me and my £2.5 million house? So it isn't off-piste, is it? It's very, very relevant to this conversation, because that's what you've ended up believing.
But at the end of the day, what you should be doing as well, they should be doing checks to see if everyone actually needs all of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We shouldn't be talking about people in £2.5 million houses paying a few grand a year. We should be talking about disabled people in cars.
So, but what I'm saying to you,
I know what you're saying to me. I'm listening to every word, Rob.
But what I'm saying is, when I started off, I was in the council house, and
and if you were still there, you wouldn't have to pay a mansion tax. But you're not. So what?
But that makes all you're doing is just is completely one-sided.
What do you mean it's completely one-sided? I'm going to get hit with it. I'm going to get hit with it as well. We're on the same side. We're both going to be able to do our patriotic duty and plug some of the holes caused by ludicrous political decisions over the last 14 years.
Absolutely, but at the same time, the government needs to turn around and say, right, well, where can we save money?
Let's go after more disabled people.
No, it's not. So again, that's
the one you came up with, Rob. That's the one you reached for first,
mate. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you need to be more careful. Well,
I've got good news for you. BMW and Audi cars are going to be removed from the car scheme for disabled.
Absolutely, because I was with someone at the weekend and they said that the amount of money that is wasted on these is just astronomical.
Yeah, but it's the same amount of money regardless of whether you drive a tiny car or a big car. It's the allowance that you get that you choose to put towards whatever car you want. So how is that wasted?
putting up mansion tax, how much is that going to raise? It's going to probably
about
raise
400 million,
maybe.
Yeah, that's what they hope.
Million. Whereas I'd rather pay a little bit more tax and it be distributed correctly.
But not to disable people with cars, though.
Sorry?
Not to disable people with cars.
No,
though.
I'd rather it be if they need it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So why do you think that story in the last 6 months has become so big, Rob?
Because
12 months ago you never gave it a second thought. What do you think has happened in the last 6 months that has made a nice bloke with regards to the Motability scheme? It's made a nice bloke like you think that the reason why I shouldn't have to pay a mansion tax is all these disabled people driving around in cars that they don't deserve. How do you think that happened, mate?
It's not just that.
That's the first thing you raised when you rang this programme.
If you let me speak for 1 second.
If you'll answer the question that I've asked, how do you think that happened?
With regards to, because obviously it's been publicly made, people are being made aware of it.
By whom?
More often. By everyone.
No, not by everyone. By whom?
It's common knowledge that there's a lot of people on benefits.
Wasn't talked about 12 months ago. What has happened? Why is it the first thing you reach for? Robin Rickmansworth, looking for reasons why he shouldn't pay tax on his £2.5 million house, is talking about disabled people in Motability vehicles. How has that happened?
You've missed the point completely.
Of course I have, Rob.
You've missed the point completely.
Well, remind me what it is.
What I was saying to you was that when I started working, we had nothing. We've worked extremely hard.
I heard all that. Okay? That's not a point. That's a biography. I'll wait for it to be published.
Why should we be penalised?
Why should I be penalised?
Why should we be penalised when the
disabled people are driving around in cars
isn't being utilised correctly?
Oh, that's a different. No, that's not what you're saying. You're saying you shouldn't pay it because you've worked hard and you grew up in a council house. And I'm saying, what's that got to do with the price of eggs?
I'm saying the money, the tax as well. Okay, that I've no problem in paying more income tax. No problem at all. I think that's the way it should be done. More income tax, clever spending on welfare. Cut the welfare slightly.
Which bits, mate?
Sorry?
Which bits?
Again, it's not. I'm not down to that, to make that. And I know you're going to say, well, you made that accusation, but at the same time, I just think it needs to be.
I know you do. I know you do, and you're not alone. And loads of people think that they shouldn't be paying more tax. And fair play to you for thinking you should be paying more income tax, but that goes on welfare as well, and that goes on Motability. And with the greatest of respect, if I was having a phone in about whether or not you should pay more income tax, you might be ringing me to tell me that you'd happily pay a mansion tax, but you don't think you should be paying more income tax. We've got no way of pinning that down. But listen to yourself, and I say this with love. The idea that the financial plight of this country is caused by people in Motability vehicles, people on universal credit or asylum seekers in hotels is absolutely ridiculous. But it has been very deliberately, very carefully and very successfully seeded in the minds of perfectly decent people like you. And it goes hand in hand. The reason why the rhetoric is so attractive is because we think it lets us off the hook. We somehow think that it will make us better off to resist these kind of ideas, but it doesn't. It really doesn't make us better. The only thing that makes us better off is a proper redistribution of wealth. And that involves going after the people who own the newspapers and who buy the television stations and who punt the rhetoric that has got you complaining about the Motability scheme in the context of a conversation about paying $2 or $3 grand a year for the privilege of living in one of the most expensive houses in the country. And that's the end of my TED Talk.
Watch the Motability moment closely, because it's the point in this call worth being precise about, since O'Brien's line was actually correct at the time. BMW, Audi, Mercedes, Benz, Alfa Romeo, and Lexus were genuinely removed from the Motability scheme's vehicle list from late November 2025, following the same budget this call is discussing, with the Chancellor explicitly citing concern about the scheme subsidizing premium cars, rather than serving its intended purpose. So this wasn't O'Brien inventing good news sarcastically out of nothing. The change was real and had just happened. What's worth noting is that it doesn't actually settle the underlying question either. Removing luxury brands from an allowance scheme is a genuine cost control measure, but it also doesn't establish that the scheme's overall spending was being meaningfully wasted, since the allowance amount itself stayed the same regardless of which car a claimant chose within it. The specific £400 million estimate for the mansion tax's revenue is worth flagging as the kind of figure that deserves independent verification rather than taking on trust from either side of a call like this. Since preliminary Treasury costings for new property tax measures often shift as the policy design gets finalized, whether that specific number holds up over time is a separate question from whether the broader logic of the tax is sound. Where O'Brien's questioning does real, careful work is in tracking the sequence of Rob's own reasoning rather than arguing abstract tax policy. Rob opens with a biographical case for why the tax feels unfair to him personally. Then, without being prompted toward the topic, reaches for Motability recipients as the place savings should come from instead. O'Brien's repeated question, how did that happen, is a fair and specific one. It's not disputing that Rob holds his view sincerely. It's asking why that particular target, among many possible places government spending could be scrutinized, was the first one that came to mind. That's a legitimate thing to probe, distinct from disputing whether welfare spending should ever be examined at all, which is a separate and reasonable position to hold. The broader claim about media ownership, deliberately seeding this specific pattern of thought, is worth treating as O'Brien's own interpretive argument rather than an established fact demonstrated by the call itself. It's a real and commonly made critique of how tabloid coverage frames welfare spending relative to overall budgets, but it's a claim about media influence and intent that would need its own separate evidence beyond one caller's stated views. To fully substantiate, distinct from the more directly observable fact of what Rob actually said and in what order he said it. If breakdowns like this are useful to you, get subscribed to Harry Unfiltered, and I'll keep checking the specifics as carefully as this deserves.